Welcome everybody to Single Parenting with Success. My name is Mark. I'm an education coordinator down here in Mandurah. I run a lot of different parenting courses, plus other couples courses and men's courses. Today we will be talking and focusing particularly on single parenting and the best outcomes you can get from that. I'll hand you over to Suzanne.
Hi Mark, and hello to all the viewers today. I've worked for RA for 10 years in separating services, and I separated from my children's father when they were 1.5 and 3. So I have some life experiences to hopefully also share with you today. So let's continue, Mark.
All right.
See what we can do.
Yes, what I didn't say there, which I'll prompted by you, Suzanne, was I was also a single parent as well for 5 years with my 3 daughters, and that story will come out today as we progress through the slides. All right, so the acknowledgement of country, first of all. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the Noongar people as the original custodians of this land on which we are presenting today, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and future. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. The information discussed in this webinar is general in nature and does not take into account specific personal situations or circumstances you may currently be experiencing. You should consider whether the information is appropriate for your needs and where appropriate, seek professional advice. If you're someone you know is experiencing a crisis situation, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or emergency services on 000. Thank you. All right, Suzanne, let's move on. So our first slide here, looking at the challenges and benefits of single parenting. Suzanne,
challenges.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yes,
some of the challenges.
We've got the grief and loss up first. That's a hard subject to start with.
Yeah.
Certainly, separating from a relationship is very difficult for parents to encounter. Obviously, we've got expectations. We don't go into a marriage or a relationship with the expectation to separate. We have expectations usually for life. So certainly when we lose a relationship, there's a lot of losses about obviously the family loss and also all our future losses. So a hard place for parents to be.
Yes, I think also for me, the loss of the dream together, your relationship with your former partner, and also being a family. I realized and thought to myself, the past 12 years we'd had will be no more, and that was a hard pill to swallow at the time.
Absolutely. So so the isolation, very much being a single parent, certainly hopefully it was worse in our time, Mark, rather than today. Hopefully it's more accepting in today's, but I felt very isolated because families had mums and dads and children, and they did family things, and to be a single parent I felt very, very isolated.
Yes, I did too. I went through that, and particularly for me the first 6 months were the hardest, and I needed my sister actually to kick me up the pants, so to speak, and say, come on, Mark, you've got to get out of this. You need to connect more with people, go back to your friends, go back to making new friends, do things that will connect you back into community. And that was something I had to go through. I'll expand on that later as we go.
Okay, yeah, and stress being in a household where I worked and I had to juggle trying to earn enough money to run the house and provide everything for my children, but also spending enough time with them. So it was juggling time. How much do you work and how much do you spend with your children, and how much you've got to sleep, you've got to do all of that as one person, and I found that really, really stressful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think again, the first 6 months were the toughest for me. Didn't find too stressed. I was working. I had my mum's support. She was in a granny flat in our house, so she was a big help to me at the time. Particularly as I had my 3 daughters living with us 100% of the time. So that was quite tough at the start of it all. The other funny part of that is shopping. I never used to do our weekly shopping, and for me to go into a supermarket suddenly and own all of that, not knowing where anything was, that took me a few weeks to get my head around what we needed for the week. But yes, I looked on it as a challenge and not an opportunity to grow.
There's a lot of roles involved, isn't it? And paying the bills, doing the shopping, cleaning house, and all of that on top of working and and being available for children. There's an awful lot to do as a single person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we come down to the communicating with the former partner.
Yikes. Yes.
It's a really tough one.
It is a tough one, and I'm sure in the initial separating stage, most of us are going through that grief and loss of the relationship, and we could feel bitter and resentful and all of those high emotions. So how do we communicate and put our children first when we're feeling those high emotions ourselves in separation? It's very, very difficult, but hopefully in time we move towards being able to communicate better as time goes on and our emotions become less.
Yes, I think once the emotions start to subside a bit, the initial emotions, then certainly for me things improved. I do remember down the track, my former partner and myself used to communicate with a book, because there was no mobile phones in those days. So it was a communications book.
They still use that communications book, Mark. Yes.
Yes,
and hand them over from one parent to the other and use a communication book. So still used today.
Yeah, and I know there are apps available now as well that you can use to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Now the other point there also is the pressure and the stress of the family court. That cannot be understated, I don't think.
So just when you might be getting to a stage where you feel like you might be able to communicate better with your former partner, up comes another court hearing, and up come the emotions again, and that fight and battle between the two of you. It's very difficult to hold a relationship while the family court's running alongside you and bringing in more complications and stresses. Into the situation. So
yes, I still vividly remember that. And I had my daughters, as I mentioned earlier, for the first 12 months on my own, and then my ex-partner decided that we'd go to family court so that she could fight for some custody, and we ended up with 50-50. But that was over many months of lawyers and family court, and the pressure and stress of that can't be understated.
Months, I think you got away with it well in months. Usually it's a 2-year plus these days, Mark, in the family court. So people are still hooked in to the beginning, or they go in waves of just starting to feel a bit better. Then all of a sudden we're back in court and we're fighting and arguing over time spent with the children, and up come all of those emotions again. And then it takes it could take months to just come back down again and start to be able to breathe, and then bang, we're back in family court again, and up come all those emotions again. So very, very difficult time. More difficult if we're going through the family court.
Yes.
To get through those feelings of separation.
All right, Suzanne, let's go over to the more positive side of this, the benefits of being a single parent.
Certainly the biggest one is hopefully it's less conflict now in our home. So so we're not arguing with a former partner. So all of those arguments are out of the initial home, and then hopefully we're not doing it in hearing of our children. We're not doing it in changeovers of children, and we're not doing it on phone calls so that they're listening to any further arguments. Hopefully that we're doing that so that they're not involved and they can't.
Very good point. Yes, I think that comes up a bit later on, but certainly, yes, very important there to keep the children out of any conflict. Not their fault.
And then hopefully, it's certainly in time as we get through all this family court and the initial separation, that there's no more conflict within the home. So hopefully everything's a lot nicer, and we're able to breeze along.
Yes, I think the other part for me was it's linked in there on the second dot point, the no one else to consider in your choices. I could make the choices without having to ask the partner what she wanted,
Yes.
and so therefore less conflict.
Yes.
We all have different parenting styles, and I certainly had different parenting styles.
Yes, and if we've got children going from one home to the other,
Mhm.
like yourself had 50-50, so they're going
Yeah.
equally from one home to the other. Each parent has the opportunity to parent the best they can. So we're obviously looking at the capacity. If you've gone through family court, one's going to presume both parents have the same ability and capacity to parent.
Yes.
So when they're going back from one to the other, we're obviously allowing each parent to have their own rules and their own ways of trying to parent the best they possibly can, with the aim of getting to a destination of probably the same, because we're all looking for the best for our children, aren't we?
Yes.
We just may get there,
absolutely.
get there differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that. So moving on then, parenting the way you choose, and then rediscovering yourself and trying new things. How was that for you, Suzanne?
Wow, yes. Well, there's a lot of having to, you don't have that relationship at home anymore. So it's about getting out there and building new relationships. And how do we do that when we're working, we're looking after children, we obviously have all those home commitments as well. And then we have to try and put some time aside to go out and meet new people or get involved in new groups, doing other sporting activities. And how do we do all of that with the stresses? But it's so important to do, because we really, really do need to move into having other relationships besides at work. We've got work relationships, but obviously they're not personal relationships. So we need to be building on that. And a lot of the time when we've had couples and friends where both parents have been involved in, they've had to maybe choose in all of this not to go backwards and forwards. So we may have lost some of the relationships that were really important to us. So all of that goes on in the backdrop too. Who's going to remain? And then they might be still in family, so they're doing family things, and now we're separate. So we've got a whole new world to discover when we become a separate parent. But there's a lot more out there to become involved with other separate parents. So how do you find them, Mark?
Yes, good question. Well, back in the day when I went through this time, I was fortunate enough to join a singles group, and every second weekend, when we didn't have our children on the Saturday night, we'd all meet up and go to the movies together, or go to a cheap restaurant or cafe or whatever. And that was a really lifesaver for me. It took me a while to well, as I mentioned earlier, 6 months to get into a mindset of doing that. But once I did, it just brought me out, and I think I learned more about female relationships in that time than I've been 12 years of marriage. So that was a very interesting.
And now we have Facebook, so there are lots of groups up on Facebook. I sort of searched through and looked for different things like that, and found lately that there's so many different groups in just single groups, or just meetup groups, or just going out groups. There's just so many groups that you can become involved in all different age groups. So Facebook definitely has a lot going for you in meeting new people.
All right, let's move on to the needs of our children now. So we've got the headings that we're going to be talking about in a second: security, stability, a relationship with the other parent, the emotional support, and what we call good enough parenting. So let's dive into these topics. So the first one there, the security and stability for our children.
Well, certainly for children, their life has just been picked up and shook, and very different to what their expectation, because in most cases, children want their both parents to be there in their lives all the time, and not having to work out which home they're going to and how much time are they going to spend with each parent, and which house they're going to be in, what school are they going to be, all this security and stability about children haven't had a say in the fact that their parents have now separated and their whole life is changing. It must be very, very, very difficult for them to acknowledge now that, what school are they going to go to? What friends are they going to be able to meet? Are they going to be able to speak to the other parent? All of these things. Yeah,
Yes.
It's a very, very difficult time for children.
Yes, and obviously there will be change because, the fact you're separating from a former partner, inevitably there's always change in many, many different areas. And I think for our children, it's trying to minimize those changes. I know for us, my former partner moved one side of the school in the same suburb and I lived the other. And once the 50-50 custody came in, then that worked really well. The girls knew where they were going that week, and the big bag came back on Sunday night with all their school clothes in. So we had that to navigate every week. So I was responsible for 1 week, and then my former partner was for the following week. But in regard to seeing cousins, grandparents, that really didn't change much for my daughters, which I was very, very pleased about.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and so important because the children can't become that tool of pulling from where you're not speaking to them anymore and you're spending it over here and you're not doing that anymore. It's very, very difficult for children to become a pawn in all of that, rather than their life, trying to keep their life as it was before the parents separated.
Yeah.
As much as it was before the separation is really, really important for them.
Yes. I think the other one is not, and children have a propensity to do that, is to blame themselves for the separation, and they internalize it in that way that it was my fault if I'd kept my room tidier, or if I'd have done what mum asked me to do and I was more obedient, then maybe they wouldn't have separated.
Yes.
So important to reassure your children that
very
it's
much
nothing
that young
to do with
age
them.
group that they internalize it as being their fault. So certainly a subject to embrace with our children about how it isn't their fault.
Yes, very important. And the pets, we actually got a dog. We didn't have a dog before, but when the separation happened, within the first month, we got a little Sylvie Terrier, Dino, who lived many, many years with us. So the girls were very happy about that. It was a benefit for them. All right, moving on. So to talk about your child's relationship with the other parent, and we navigate that minefield.
Yes. So, talking about, say, in your situation and mine, where both parents are both capable of parenting, is certainly one situation. But of course, just acknowledging that sometimes another parent may not be able to provide safety. So that creates a different situation because the children have the right to have a relationship with both parents as long as they are safe. And that's the right of the child.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that's our UN right of the child. So we do need to come into consideration that if a parent can't provide safety, then that changes a lot of what we're saying today. So
yeah, I think the other important part there, and the second point, the role of the parent to encourage the relationship for the child. And I'll look back onto myself, certainly in the early months, that was not easy to do because of the situation of my former partner leaving. But once I'd got my head around that, then, and I did some workshops, had some counselling in what was my role, what should I be doing? And I learned that, my idea is to encourage that relationship where possible, and also never to put the former partner down. I think that's a big one. Bagging the former partner is a no-no. Your children will love you. They will love your ex-partner. So it's important to realise that it's not your role to try and point out negatives in them.
That's really hard, Mark, when you're maybe despising and resentful against the other parent, and you're wanting to grab your children and drag them across on your team. I think that becomes a bit human nature of pulling everybody on your team and then gang up on the other.
Yeah.
And not to do that with our children is really difficult. And to acknowledge what it is, how it is for them, and a lot of acknowledging their feelings and what it's like for them, and to have two separated parents going backwards and forwards So very much about talking about how they feel, what that's like for them,
Yeah.
acknowledging what it's like for them all the time,
Yes.
rather than putting all our own emotions in there. Like, they really have to be separate and
Yep.
different. And with our own emotions, we obviously need to talk to other adults or services around how we feel, and not to be putting that on our children. And that
Mm.
could be very, very difficult in the initial separating stage.
Absolutely. Yes, I think we've made good comment on that, and just to recognize and realize, anyone watching this, that it is a very, very tough time, those initial months and possibly even early years.
Yes.
Mm. I think we've talked through the other parents informed and involved in the children's activities where possible, sports days, school days,
Yes.
and where parents are invited up to
Yes,
school.
because if this is what our children are wanting, and most children do want that relationship with both. So
Yes.
so that's what we're looking at mostly today, but we will look a little bit differently as we go along. But most of the things, we're looking at two capable parents. Children are wanting both parents to be involved in their life, in schools and activities and different things, to be able to have both parents there watching them and be proud of them, and what it would be like for them to actually be in one home with two parents.
Yes.
And not to exclude a parent from one of them.
Very true. All right, Suzanne, we'll move on. Next slide. We're talking about emotional support for our children now. So that's we talked through this a little bit, but it needs, I think, expanding a bit.
Yeah. So I know I had a laminated emotional wheel on the fridge, and not only send my children to the wheel to try and understand how they're feeling, I would have to do that myself, because I was going through the same sort of emotions as they were. But for a child to have an understanding what's happening for them, their emotions around us, and as a parent, just being able to sit with those emotions and acknowledge how they're feeling and how difficult it is for them.
Yes. Yes, no, I think it's a great idea. And the one of the things I talk about in workshops that I run now is the emoji chart, you know, with all the smiley faces, angry, sad, happy, frustrated, etc., and pop that up on your fridge. I think you're ahead of the pack, Suzanne. I certainly did that with my daughters, and I encourage now with my grandchildren as well to getting connection with those emotions as early as you can. Help your children to name the emotion, and then talk through it and listen. And if it needs professional help, maybe at their school, the school psychologist or chaplain, then by all means use any resources you have to for the betterment of your children and their health.
Yeah, and mostly children just need to be heard. They don't need you to put in solutions. They actually just need you to sit with them, just acknowledge how they're feeling, acknowledge how difficult it is for them, and what's happening in their life, and just sit there alongside them with that, rather than, I mean, sometimes if they're looking for some sort of solutions, maybe with the other parent, it would be about just sort of trying to give them some tools in maybe coping, going from one home to the other, what it's like having different rules in one home to the other home, coping with maybe new rules in the other home, and giving them strategies in how to cope with that.
Yes, that's a very good point. I think it needs a realization and empathy to put ourselves in our children's position, thinking, you know, and I love this story about the hats, you know, when they walk into Dad's, they put on the green hat as they walk in the door. This is Dad's rules, what he expects us to do. Tidy up after ourselves in the kitchen. We don't jump on the beds, keep our bedrooms tidy. And then when they go into Mum's house, maybe they put the red hat on, and then the rules change regardless of what that is.
They do change, and how difficult that must be for a child. I think it'd be easier for a younger one to adapt more. But as they get older, it must be really hard when they've had fixed ways of doing things, and now there's so much change. And how they have to adapt to that change. And none of this is anything that they've had choices in. So so acknowledging that difficult for them, and giving them some ways of being able to cope with change and the differences.
Yes, I clearly remember now on Sunday nights when they'd come back from my former partner, you know, the bags that get dropped off, we bring them into the door, and I noticed there for the first couple of hours they were different children. They were running around. They were, you know, their emotions were high. behaviors were normal.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
my expectations anyway, because
Yeah.
they've been used to so different rules. They've spent a week with the other parent, and it's them code switching enough into coming, okay, this is Dad's house now, this is, and it took a while.
Yes,
As I say.
yes,
Mm.
yes, it does. Like if they come back on that evening, you know, for a lot of children, it takes that night
Yeah.
to get back into the swing of the whole changeover to a different household. Some children just go into their room and become really exclusive as well. They don't
Yes.
they're not the ones running around and jumping, and
Yeah.
so every child does this a little bit differently. So it's acknowledging that whole change and swing from one home to the other is difficult for them. Some children would cope better than others, but some not. And just giving them that space that they need, and then hopefully, you know, a night's sleep, and we wake up in the morning and we can put another hat on. But it takes time to do that.
Yeah. Yes, it does. All right. So moving on. So the concept of good enough parenting. What does this mean to you, Suzanne?
Oh, well, you give me your percentages and I'll go with that.
All right. Yes, I didn't put that up on the slide. So the percentages is 30% is the industry standard I've heard of, that you are at the top of your game as a parent for only 30% of the time. And I know in this single parent world, to do that can be tough and can be hard, but that's what we're saying. So the rest of the time you're getting on, you're setting goals, your routine, you're trying to keep your children into that routine, but 30% is the industry figure.
So 30% you need to be that top parent.
Yes.
And then the rest of it, you're actually doing the best that you can, struggling with it and working with it. Is that what you mean by the top 30?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the other 70, we can make mistakes. We can have second shots at it. We can apologize when we get it wrong. We can go back to our children and say, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that," or "I got that wrong," or "I could have done that differently." I'll redo it now, like take two and redo it and do it in another way. Is that what it's giving us a chance to do as well?
I think so, Suzanne.
Never
stop improving.
No, and we don't get it right,
No,
do we?
No.
We don't always get it right. So, all right. So if we're looking at 30%, so 70% of the time we can get it wrong. We can go back. We can double take. We can triple take. We can apologize for the mistakes that we make. And we can continue to try and get it right. But taking into mind, we've got a lot of roles on us now. So it's very, very difficult to get this right for our children, because we're trying to get it right for us. We're trying to get it right. Each children's a bit differently, and we're trying to function in society and pay bills and do all this as well. So there's an awful lot on us. So
there's a lot of
30%. Okay.
Yeah.
So 70, we can do the best we can.
It's probably realistic, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. And I think the other thing there, having the consistency. So parenting, and having said that, you know, in a normal, I say normal family, a balanced family, I've got both partners living together and everything's going well. Even then, us parents are trying to do the best they can with the skills they have at the time, and that's what life is all about, isn't it? Doing the best you can. And I think some of the dot points, we've got some really good guides there of what to focus on. I think consistency is probably the number one thing that I would say, with the discipline and expectations for our children. Our children feel loved when they know the boundaries, when they know what's accepted and what isn't, and they thrive, and in their love tanks are filled up when, as parents, we give that guidance. So the more we can try and focus on that, I think the
children
better.
definitely need routine, because it gives them an understanding of what their world looks like. Otherwise, it's erratic and all over the place.
Yes.
They need it to know to have those guidelines, because that's what they work along, and they get a straight line to be able to move forward in having routines, schedules, expectations. But obviously they shift from home to home. So they're already doing the shift. So if we can keep them standard in our home and they understand what they are, then we won't have all that shifting. There's only a shift from home to home.
All right.
What about the good role model? Did you do a good role modeling?
I tried my best, Suzanne, and looking back, I think I did a pretty good job.
Did a pretty good job.
I've still got a great relationship with all three daughters now, so
good.
I think that must say something about my parenting at the time, and we often talk about it, particularly Dino, the dog, who sadly passed away a few years ago now. But he was a character.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on then to looking at the single parents now and their needs in this tough, turbulent time.
Wow, so support. Getting good support. I mean, sometimes family is good support, and other times family isn't good support.
Yep.
Sometimes our families may just support us because we're blood and they give us that support. But
Yep.
sometimes we need to move outside of that role to get other sort of supports, outside support and professional support.
Yeah.
So that people can give us other ideas than family can.
Yeah.
Choosing our friends that can give us support, but sometimes friends are good just not to share all of this, to have relationships
Yeah.
that we don't bring any
Yeah.
of this into play.
Yeah.
So that we can be free from all of our difficulties and just have relationships that aren't involved. But if we choose friends to talk to, then we need to choose them wisely.
Yes. Yes. Careful what you share with people. Yes. Timeouts as well. I know, for me, I mentioned earlier about having the timeouts more on weekends when my daughters were with my former partner, but getting out, getting in the social group. I really got into sport at that time as well. So joined some soccer teams. So I found sports, a balance for me in needing that break. I was working full time as well. So yes, times with family, as we've prompted there on the screen. I think we've put up some really good information ideas there. Yeah.
And when there's two parents in a family, sometimes they get time out on their own and sometimes they don't. But like in your case, on a 50-50, then you actually have a whole week to be able to look at yourself and your own needs and be able to get involved. So in some cases, you actually have more time to have time out.
Yes, that's very true. Very true. Which, it's a benefit in some ways, isn't it?
It can be a benefit. Where in my case, I had one child that chose to stay home most of the time, and one child that did go across most weekends. So I usually had one child with me. So I was really reliant on my parents to do a babysit if I wanted to go out at night time. So I really didn't have the freedom of having 1 week on my own. So
no, I think it is a matter of tapping into the people around you, the supports, as you mentioned, your family, your friends, whatever, whoever you've got, but to use it, to realize the benefit of that for yourself.
Oh, absolutely. You definitely need time out. Yes. Yes.
Yes. All right. So health. Oh, we did touch on that, didn't we, a little bit?
Diet, exercise, stress management, sleep.
Yeah.
That's all very difficult when you're managing so much in your life.
Yep.
But to try and focus on that, because what would we look if it was 30% in being that perfect parent? Can we say 20% of the time we really need to be focusing on looking after this? I think you said before, wasn't it about the mask in the aeroplane? If you don't look after yourself and put the mask on first, you can't look after everybody else.
No, that's right. And also seeking professional help if required. See your GP if you need some counselling, if you need some help with other professional services. Then call out, sooner than later. I think
group smart.
Yeah.
Going to groups.
Yes.
Attending your groups.
Definitely. And workshops, education workshops. I'll talk about that a little bit at the end, but yes, definitely connect with other like-minded people and get support wherever you can.
Yes.
And the last point there, Suzanne, realistic expectations.
Yes. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. And I think we go back to the parenting the best that we can. With only 30% of doing it perfect, and the other 70, we need to give ourselves some leeway. And as I said before, we can always double take, triple take. We always go back when we realise we could have done it better. We go back, we apologise, and we do it again. And that's good role modelling for our children as well.
Yes.
To know that if we don't get it right, it's not we don't get it right. It's not the end of the world. We can always try again and try again and try again. So good role modeling to always go back, apologize, say what we could have done differently, be attempting to do things better. And I think that's good for our children to see that we're not, we haven't got unrealistic expectations of ourselves or our children.
Yes, indeed. All right. So self-care for the single parent, we just expand those topics a little bit more now. Mention there the professional help.
Counselling, of course.
Yes.
One-to-one counselling groups,
Yep,
yes.
yep.
Yes, connecting with different community and social groups, very important.
Mm,
I also like I like the gym. I like doing physical exercise. I really find that that's really beneficial for me. If you take
Yep.
away physical exercise, that's it. Down I
no,
go. Yeah.
even walking,
Yeah,
I think everything on YouTube is all about walking, get out and walk, even if
Yeah.
you do, 5 minutes a day.
yeah. You
Yeah.
really need to get the blood running
Yep.
through your body.
Yes.
Very important to get all the endorphins and everything running through nicely and getting all that smile back on your face. Singing's a
Mm,
good one too, though. I'm in a
yes,
choir now, so
I've heard you're in a choir system.
can't sing, but I'm in a choir.
No.
But just singing, and apparently it's got something to do with opening the voice and the lungs, and the whole
Alright.
actual singing is gets all the endorphins and everything.
All right,
going
we might
through.
see that in another webinar, Suzanne. Who knows?
You won't see me singing.
All right, so let's move on now then. So we are finishing up the webinar now. A big thank you to all of you that's joined us. We hope that these tips and strategies help you or someone you know, and you've learned something you can adapt to your own situation. Here at Relationships Australia, we have a number of support services, including counselling and education courses and workshops. These services are available across WA as well as online. So please take a look at our website for more information on what is available in your area. You can visit our website at www.relationshipswa.org.au, Facebook page at Relationships WA, or you can call us on 1300 364 277 to find out more about how we can support you. It's been a privilege to host this webinar today. Thank you again, and we hope to see you on our next one.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.